and the purpose and the result of all of it, inshallah, doing it sincerely for Allah. And what we are doing, we are learning about Allah, and we are, inshallah, doing reflective thought on creatures. Inshallah, Kolajam, any comments on this? The introduction?
No, not really. I mean, we're here to learn for ourselves, really. I think that's what you're saying. Is that why you chose to bring this passage from the flashes at the beginning?
Yeah, kind of like prayer for us, inshallah.
Yeah, of course. Alhamdulillah. Thank you for doing this. We are here to learn for ourselves. We're not here to tell anyone anything or teach anyone anything. Ustad Nursi was very clear about that. He wrote Risale-i Nur for himself, out of his own desire to understand the creation. What follows on from there then is not really in our hands, nor is it our business, really. Whoever listens or who doesn't listen, that's not the point. We come together as a group, inshallah, with the sincere intention to try to understand who we are, what we are, where we are, and who our creator is, and what the repercussions of that are. And it's kind of, it's a dua, it's a collective dua to show our impotence, actually, to make a dua. And inshallah, if we approach if we approach the circle with that sentiment, I think it is safer. Allah.
Jazakallah. Mustafa Hocam, any comments?
Jazakallah khairan kasiran for picking up this paragraph from the 21st flash. It's amazing where one time I listened, one of the students of the Bediuzzaman Said Nursi, Ceylan Çalışkan abi, when he read this paragraph, he said if we understood this paragraph, we can understand the ikhlas, which is the sincerity. So it is the ultimate goal of all of us, but to attain it, to preserve it, there are ways or methods Ustad is showing us. One of the way, which we will inshallah read it, Al-Qayyum, Self-Subsistent, it's quite relevant because in the third line, it says the strength of certain and verified belief and through the lights proceeding from reflective thought on creatures, which leads to the knowledge of the maker. And when we are realizing we are all circled around with Allah presence, and we don't want to look any other than Allah, and we are only here to please Him, this can inshallah increase the level of our iman. And also it's a treasure. I think at the beginning of the this first race, Ustad is mentioning that even a small increase in the level of iman is like a treasure for us. So hopefully for all of us, even if we can get the smallest increase in our iman, this is a big blessing and ni'mah. Thank you.
Jazakallah. Thank you. This is a prayer for us, and why we are doing it is to, as you said, to increase our iman and to attain the level of, as if, seeing Allah, right? And thinking that Allah is all present and all seeing. And Al-Qayyum is so related to it, inshallah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So these are the ayat. Inshallah, we will study. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. بيده ملكوت كل شيء له مقاليد السماوات والأرض وإن من شيء إلا عندنا خزائنه ما من دابة إلا هو آخذ بناصيتها. In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate, in whose hand is the dominion of all things. بيده ملكوت كل شيء. To him belongs the keys of the heavens and the earth. And there is nothing but with us are its treasures. There is not a moving creature but he has grasped its forelock. These are all related ayats about Ism Qayyum. There is one paragraph here about Ism Qayyum, and then we will talk about how Allah has no equal from that sense. First ray, the glorious creator of the universe is self-subsistent, Qayyum. That is, he subsists, continues, endures of himself. All things subsist and continue through him. They remain in existence and have permanence. If that relationship of self-subsistence was cut off from the universe for even the fraction of a second, the universe would be annihilated. And here I want to read the comments of Erol Abi. I think that contributes to the meaning. Qayyum, one of Allah's names, the one whose existence and permanence is of himself. Existence and permanence is of himself, who needs no other to continue to exist, who is self-subsisting, self-enduring, and who sustains everything and gives them continuity. After this paragraph, inshallah, we can talk about how Allah has no equal. But inshallah, I can get comments on important parts, inshallah. Colin Abe.
I think I'm going to have to hear more from the narrative, actually, before I can really say anything. It's very early. Maybe the first thing would be to understand that self-subsistence is exactly what it says. Allah doesn't need anything extraneous to himself to subsist. His subsistence is completely independent of anything else, whereas everything else which subsists, as we'll see, subsists dependently, and its dependence is absolute. But inshallah, if we can read a bit more, maybe Mustafa would like to say something before we continue.
Thank you very much. It was a wonderful definition. But what I can also see here is because as the materials or the creation needs to preserve their continuity, they want to preserve their functionality, but they cannot do it by themselves. The products on the shelf, we see it in the supermarkets, they need some external things to be able to continue their life. And like we are also in the same position, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's self-subsistent. He's Al-Qayyum, from himself, bizatihi, he subsists, continues, and endures of himself. So we all depend on him, and the relationship between the creation and the creator, even a small second of moment, if he withdraws this subsistence, we will be all collapse. So I think for now, this is what comes to my mind. We can maybe continue.
Jazakallah, when you said continued, I remembered, the part we read in the beginning, ikhlas, to attain ikhlas. We should realize and we should remember that Allah is with us, right? He is seeing us, He is all present. And when you said we also attain continuity, right? The fact that we are continuing to, breathe, to exist, is from Him and from His name, Qayyum, right? From the lights preceding, from that name, we continue to exist. So Allah is with us all the time. Inshallah, that's a reminder. Inshallah, I will read more, inshallah. And these are all related to how Allah, Creator, Qayyum, has no equal, no peer. And from an ayah from the Quran, Laysa kamithlihi shay, there is nothing that is like unto Him. Furthermore, as the Quran of mighty stature decrees, together with the all-glorious one's self-subsistence, there is nothing that is like unto Him. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ. That is, neither in his essence, nor in his attributes, nor in his actions has he like, equal, peer, or partner. Indeed, for a most unholy one who takes the universe with its circumstances and functions in the grasp of his divine lordship, and who regulates, administers, sustains, and nurtures it with perfect order, as though it was a house or a palace, to have any like, equal, partner, or peer is not possible. It is impossible. For sure, one for whom the creation of the stars is as easy as that of particles, and to whose power is subjugated the greatest thing in the same way that the most minute is subjugated, and for whom nothing is an obstacle to any other thing, and no action an obstacle to any other action, and in whose view innumerable individuals are present in the same way that a single individual is present, and who hears all voices simultaneously, and is able to answer the limitless needs of all simultaneously, and outside the sphere of whose will and volition is nothing, no state, as is testified to by all the order and balance that is present in the beings in the universe. And although he is in no place, through whose power and knowledge is present everywhere, and although everything is utterly distant from him, is able to be utterly close to all things, such an all-glorious, ever-living, and self-subsistent one most certainly can in no way have any equal, any like, equal, partner, deputy, opposite, or peer. It would be impossible. His sacred qualities and attributes can only be considered through allegory and comparison. All the comparisons and allegories in the Risale-i Nur are of this sort of comparison and parable. Kolnadam is, can you see the screen well, or?
Yeah, I can see it. It's very small, but I can see it. Yeah.
So that I can see all the page, maybe I can show only the half of the page with bigger font.
I can read it. I don't know how other people are.
Mm-hmm. So this is whole paragraph about like the qualities of Allah.
He seems at the beginning of this treatise to be reaffirming the notion of, first of all, of divine unity, and how easy it is for Allah to create everything and to command everything creatively, since he is close to everything, and yet everything is utterly distant from him. And his, absolute and utter alterity, his difference, the difference between him and everything else. In other words, he is unique. His ahadiyya is reaffirmed here, as is his wahidiyya. So he is utterly unlike anything else in the creation, and yet at the same time he is able to comprehend everything, and everything, although distant in one sense, is utterly close to him. I think what he's doing in this is just reaffirming the Tawhidi paradigm, which runs through the Risale. He reaffirms that because he has to set up the attribute Qayyum, and when he is showing that Allah is completely unlike any of his creatures, this is important for us to understand that self-subsistence is also something which for the creator is sui generis, it is unique. And everything that the creator is, we are not, and also vice versa. So while Allah is self-subsistent, and his self-subsistence is unique, his self-subsistence is also independent, whereas our subsistence, as we'll see, is very much dependent.
Dependence.
So it's a kind of introduction, I think.
Yeah, when you said we are everything we are, Allah is not, right? The creator is not. And if we have some qualities that kind of like Allah has, we're dependent to him. Right, everything and all.
Yeah, yes. I mean, with when it comes to attributes, we have to be very, very careful to not to make complete tashbih. You know, we can say that there are things that we possess which, in a sense, we share with Allah, such as compassion, such as justice, and lots of other attributes. You know, the Jamali attributes. But then we have to, at the same time, reaffirm that, you know, it's utterly unlike God. So if we are compassionate and God is compassionate, human compassion is completely unlike divine compassion. And then that's the same for all of the attributes, all of the Jamali attributes. So knowledge, for example, we can say that Allah is all-knowing, and we can also say that human beings can know things, but human beings have to go through a process of learning and acquisition before they can know something. Whereas for the creator's knowledge is presential, you know, it doesn't depend on, you know, antecedents such as learning, memorizing, effort, striving. So we can affirm the attributes, but at the same time, we have to disavow any kind of similarity between those attributes. And I think this is important when we're talking about Qayyum, because as Ustad says, we are permanent, but our permanence is very much dependent, you know, a moment by moment dependence. Whereas for Allah, he is self-subsistent, which means he doesn't depend on an external source for his existence and for his subsistence.
So for Allah's shu'unat, for compassion, for example, we make comparisons, but it's in the last paragraph, the underlined sentence, his sacred qualities and attributes can only be considered through comparison. We can never comprehend, but only, I don't know, we cannot comprehend, but we are just trying to understand, maybe like consider through comparisons, right?
Absolutely. We have to make tanzih, and when we make tashbih, we must also make tanzih. You know, we can say that Allah is, we are, for example, compassionate. We can show compassion to others, but our compassion is it's a reflected compassion, you know. And if you look at your reflection in a mirror, you can say, well, my reflection is identical to my face. You know, what I see in the mirror is exactly the same as my face, but actually, in actual fact, it is nothing like it. It's something completely different because it's a reflection. So in that sense, we can say that the attributes that we appear to share with the Creator are reflected attributes. And in actual fact, because they're reflected, they are in one sense nothing like the one who is reflected.
Thank you. Also, before asking Mustafa Hojam, when you said Allah is unique, you know, that's what we learn, you know, in this Ismi Qayyum and also in this page. Allah is unique also in his actions too, and not only in his attributes and essences. As you said, in his reflections, actions, he is unique, right? No one can, you know, or make anything that from his creation, like his arts in the universe, from the plants, animals, you know, it's amazing. He shows his infinite power, even in the minutest, for example, cells, right, in the cells of particles.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we say that we can have some kind of creativity, you know, that Allah creates and We may build things, we may, create things in a sense, produce things. Actually, it's not us who are doing that. We know this. We know we can't create anything, actually. We can't make anything. Everything that we do, our actions, they're all created anyway. So yeah, he is absolutely the only creator. And if we do appear to have some kind of creativity, it is again reflected creativity.
Thank you. Mustafa Hocam.
Thank you very much for the insights, Colin Hocam. What comes to my mind also, Ustad is at the beginning kind of giving like a warning or a reminder. No matter how much we struggle to understand Allah from any aspects here, from the aspects of Qayyumiyya, we cannot truly understand him, this is for sure. And there is also a level of kind of comparison. Ustad is teaching us which level or how we can approach to compare it. And this is maybe through the examples in the Risale-i Nur. I think the Shu'unat, which is the sacred qualities of Allah, the sacred attributes of Allah, this is like a high voltage zone. We may not truly understand or compare really. This is what I understood. But from Sifat, from the attributes, like Allah is seeing, and he gave us also a small portion as temporary. We are not having this, but we want to understand the basar, sam, the hearing. So those kind of things, we sometimes, have a little bit comparison. But there is, as I said, I think the classification of, how much we can approach it based on our skills, understanding. And of course, this is with the help of Allah at the beginning. But from the perspective of materialism, because Ustad is entering here also some scientific terms, the universe, particles, stars. So we are dealing with the objects in the material world. So there is a sustenance of these material. There is a preservation. It doesn't decompose. So there is a life cycle. So all of these things Allah is providing with the name of Qayyum. But with our comparison, to increase our Iman level also, everyone has some level of, the jobs or the windows Allah is opening for us. For example, my background is I study chemistry. So we have dealt with atoms, elements, in different levels and their interaction. So for example, we prepare seawater in the laboratory. But when we are preparing, we are also still using the material which Allah has created. Like we take it, water, fresh water, we have to mix with some salts, which is present in the seawater, mixing them. But once we prepare a synthetic water to preserve it, it's really challenging and difficult because you have to adjust the acidity and basicity, like pH. Someone maybe who's dealing with the fish tank, they know that how difficult it is to clean it up, to adjust all the parameters to maintain the seawater. Let's say we maintain it for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but Allah is maintaining this seawater for thousands, millions of years maybe. And yet another angle is, I can prepare maybe 5 liters, 10 liters. And even if you bring the greatest scientists collectively, let's say they can prepare it 1 ton, 2 ton. But the seawater in the world is trillions of liters. No chemist can ever produce this much seawater. So this is one aspect that in essence, in the attributes of Allah is the greatest chemist, no one can get closer to him. So the material is from him, the product is from him. We are just here in the playground of the world and trying to try this and that. Even we make a lot of mistakes, and yet we claim that we did this and that. we are not doing anything. We are just kind of messing around and understanding from piece here and piece there with the physics, chemistry, and biology. But I hope with our struggle, if this becomes like a ma'rifatullah, it can be only with the sincerity valuable. Otherwise, this can take us in a very negative way, which is giving all these attributes to the nature or atoms and elements, which is going to be, quite a difficult scenario. So for that reason, I think just to summarize from maybe even the previous names, we know that when the light is coming to the crystal and it splits into the different colors, and each color like the name of Allah, now Qayyum. In the aspects of the Qayyumiyya, there is no any kind of equal peer and partner to Allah. So this is for sure. I think from this point, this is what I can shortly understand. But if you have any kind of more contribution, Colin Hocam, please.
Mustafa Hocam, I couldn't understand that last sentence, like color. Did you say the color?
Oh, okay. When we have the sunlight, we see it as a white color, right? So when you have a crystal or some kind of, reflection point, we can actually split this white color into the components. So meaning all these colors coming from Allah, like different attributes, different names, but all of them is unique and no one can compare truly or understand. So let's say in the sunlight, we have blue color, let's say green color, but these colors, we try to examine it. We try to understand the functionality. These are energy levels. We try to, utilize it and mimic some of the things. But all of them is very challenging and complex when you give it to its own attributes and taking out from the original source. Meaning like to the atoms level, to the elements level. So before getting into that complexity, I think Ustad is clearing, here with the sentence, there is neither in his essence, nor in his attributes, nor his actions. He has no equal or peer or partner.
I think that Mustafa's example there of the white light is a really excellent one, because it shows us also the idea of constellations and the fact that in actual fact, all of the attributes are part of the same, are actually one and the same in reality. And that when we talk about different attributes, this is just perspective. So I think the idea of white light with its 7 colors, which are the 7 essential names, I guess, and then, it breaks down further into, we know the 99 names, actually more than 99, but we know there's lots of names. But the white light example is a good one. And I also love the idea of Allah as Kimyagar Azim, the great chemist. It's a wonderful, wonderful appellation.
Colin Hocam, we are also lucky to have a chemist, mashallah, as a speaker.
Mustafa is a chemist. I didn't know. Yeah, mashallah. Yes. I'm sure also he is a very, very great chemist himself.
And the sea water, I used to think that it's just simple basic water with, salty water. Isn't that the case? What are you,
in seawater, it's one of the most complex solutions we are dealing in our laboratory. Even our equipments are struggling when we are putting the seawater. It has salt, like the table salt we have, sodium chloride, just sodium and chloride is coming together. But there is a lot of elements, also magnesium, calcium, boron, so many things in it. It looks simple, it's just staying there, but it's a very rich media which actually we have difficulties to understand. Even right now in Saudi Arabia, we are desalinating, actually. We take out all these salts and trying to make it like a fresh water, but we consume a lot of energy, a lot of efforts, and many testings and analyzings to be able to mimic the fresh water. But it's an amazing miracle of Allah has created this seawater. It's a media for fish, like the air is our seawater, but the seawater is the air for the fish. And even Ustad is in the coming paragraphs is mentioning ether. In Ottoman language it's esir, but in English I think it's called ether. It's the seawater for the all creation. It's the essence, the smallest particle which we can ever reach. And beyond that, I think Nur Muhammadi. This is what I remember. So yeah, I mean, it's one of the solution of Allah is the seawater, but yet all of the scientists maybe can work and cannot mimic exactly, and that they cannot also sustain in the same level, which Allah is continuing and preserving this great thing.
MashaAllah.
MashaAllah, I was just thinking as Mustafa was talking that people like, David Attenborough makes all of these programs, about what they call nature. And they're wonderful, wonderful programs. And, the photography is brilliant, very, very innovative. And what they show is absolutely mind-boggling, it's awe-inspiring. And yet the narrative is completely naturalistic, They don't realize what they're saying actually is 100 different shades of shirk and kufr. And I was just thinking, you don't have to be like that as a scientist. And I don't want to embarrass Mustafa, but a believing scientist, he's an example of a scientist who is a believer. And look how different it becomes when you look at the creation and the way he was talking, about being it. He's a chemist, but he was talking about divine miracles, and he's doing the same job as a chemist. So you don't have to be a naturalist. And how different education would be, how different our society would be if these people in positions of influence, such as our teachers, our university lecturers, our chemists, our biologists, if they were looking at things through the eye of belief, everything would change. I think one day it will happen, like the magicians at the time of Pharaoh. Our scientists today are like the magicians at the time of Pharaoh. I think one day they will rebel and they will affirm the existence of Allah, inshallah.
Allah, yeah, and that's what I believe. Yeah.
One of the experience I had when I was in the graduate school, our Professor Leslie, he was talking about atoms, how they are interacting to each other, how they are regulating in the system. And then he repeatedly was saying that nature dictates. Nature tells this one and that one. Kind of, this professor is a well-known professor in the US. He has written book chapters. He has many publications. He trained hundreds of students, but yet the knowledge is not enough. You are studying, you are diving into the atoms and element, and then you are well known among the people. But when it comes to the final stage, who is the Lord of these atoms? Is it, do they communicate to each other? And one atom has a full authority of communicating and knowing everything in the compound? Or all these belong under one creator, the Holy One, who takes the universe with its circumstances and functionalities in the grasp of his divine lordship. So in one way, it's very easy to accept one Allah, one creator, and coming up like he regulates, he administers with his all knowledge and the power, and sustains and nurtures them with the perfect order. So this will just be the fitting into the program, but unfortunately, many disbelievers, or maybe believers but weakly believers, can miss one of the big thing in the picture, and this may lead to shirk, or this may lead to any different angles, which is going to be a quite dangerous scenario for us also. Inshallah, may Allah give us true understanding of the Qayyum, because this is, we came to this world when we were born. We see around us, the setup is already there. And when we started in the school also, the science is telling us this way, that way, it's combination. And, kind of like we think like they just sustain by themselves. But in reality, they don't have all these attributes. They don't have all these, actions, properties to claim that they are the owner of this compound. So I think more reflection and hopefully understanding that Allah Asma Husna, can help us.
You mentioned that this was your professor, right?
Yes.
He was a professor and he had lots of publications, I'm sure. He was renowned. He had a prestigious position. Everyone looked up to him, to his knowledge, and yet he was totally superstitious. Totally superstitious, thinking that nature can dictate things. How can you reconcile all of that knowledge, all of that learning, all of that prestige, all of that reputation with superstition? And yet they call us superstitious for believing in a creator that we can't see. It's crazy, It's They don't think at all. Nature dictates. What does that mean? Anyway.
They can maybe come up with the mechanism, but they cannot come up with the solution for why. I mean, they tell us the negative and plus, they attract each other. But when we look at the nucleus of the atom, it's positively charged, and the electrons is negatively charged. Why they are not collapsing? They are, the opposite charge. They are supposed to smash. So if the distance between electrons and the nucleus is zero, the whole maybe world is going to be like a soccer ball, a football ball. But Allah is keeping them in a certain distance with the Qayyumiyya. And the stars in the space, why staying there? I mean, why they are in a certain location and dimension? All of these things, they cannot answer it satisfactorily. But unfortunately, with the kufr, which they maybe support to each other, and some of them, they don't know what they are doing, and some of them willingly or knowingly going in the wrong way. And may Allah protect us also from that direction.
And Amin for that. One day, inshallah, Mustafa, you will write about this, inshallah. You will write a chemistry book from your perspective, from a believer's perspective. And Harun is saying in the chat, it's just the language. Language is the issue, Sometimes it is. Even Muslims, Ustad says in Tabiat Risale-i that Muslims, believers also speak the kind of language which implies unbelief. It could be down to language, yeah.
And also, maybe I believe, Kolnojam, you might, like Mustafa, you might know better. You gave the example of magicians and the Pharaoh at the time. Pharaoh was oppressing everyone, even what they think. Now, even in the science, I believe it's kind of like oppression, right? You cannot express yourself well, even if you are pushed to one idea of shirk.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, universities now are very, very stringently and strictly policed, you know, by the thought police, by the secular thought police. It's getting worse and worse. Universities are no longer places of free learning.
Inshallah, we will talk about nature too, maybe next week. Also, what we talked, Mustafa, when you mentioned about seawater keeping, preserving their quality and their property, everything has certain property in this world, right? Certain quality, like water, fire, earth, you know, all the elements, functions, and properties. And in the second paragraph, Ustaz says, indeed, for a most and holy one who takes the universe with its circumstances and functions. In original, shu'unat, like all the shu'unat and kayfiyat, in the grasp of his divine lordship. And you mentioned that you want to keep, for example, the seawater at certain state, but you cannot keep it for more than, when you said like 1 year or maybe a month at their property.
Yes, I mean, when you buy, let's say, a solution or a drink from the store, there is an expiration date, shelf life. Anything we are producing in the factories as chemists or in the medical environment, let's say we are making drugs and medicine, at some point, some bacterial growth or some of the components we are putting in, it's decaying, you know, it's losing its properties. So let's say you want to make it like a cream for your hand. So when you put 5, 6 different things, there is an acidity level like you have it in the seawater. You need to have it in a narrow range to be able to make it in a high quality. Otherwise, the color will change, it will smell, it will grow some mold and bacteria. You're going to end up having maybe 2 year, 3 year, and then after 2, 3 years, you cannot use the same cream or a toothpaste or some of the shampoos. It cannot go too long. Meaning that, yes, creation at the beginning or producing something is difficult, but one of the most difficult thing is also to preserve those attributes, functions, efficiency for the long term. Because as human being, we are also Allah has created us. We have a shelf life in the world of, like if you think the world is like a supermarket, we are on the shelf. So some of us maybe will live 70, 80 years, but within this period, our body also needs some continuity, preservation of some of the inner particles within us. All of it is needs a constant attention, because in the laboratory, we have to check some of the things every day. I mean, is it dropping or increasing? Some of them, we check the temperature, because if the temperature is too high, let's say you put a cream in the desert, in a couple of days, you will destroy that product. And certain things, it needs to be under certain humidity. So all of the different settings and criteria is like mind-blowing, you know. The more we deal with it, the more we are shocked, like how Allah is maintaining all of these tests by himself alone at every moment, and every kind of from creation day 0 till the end of the Qiyamah. It is actually a very interesting world. You know, any piece of creation and their, standing up and continuing their life is very, very, interesting.
And that's the name Qayyum, right?
Yes.
And I want to ask, you know, for example, in our body, we're made of trillions of cells, and in each cells, we need certain elements to function, and all those elements have different properties and qualities. And Allah, you know, with his name Qayyum, right, he's giving them what they need, like their qualities and their properties every second, all the elements in our body.
Yes, of course. I mean, we have an interaction from outside when we eat things, carbohydrates, different, let's say, fruits. These elements are coming into our body, and these elements should know where they are going, what is their duty, okay? If it goes in the wrong place and does the wrong function in the cell, that cell, which is not obeying to the rule of the body, we call it cancer. So people at every moment can be a cancer if the cell doesn't listen to the body orders. So with the administering all of these elements, the carbon coming to your body, meeting with the oxygen, forming a CO2 gas, and those carbon is also giving an energy to your body, because your body should be 36, 37 degrees temperature all the time. So this, I think, carbon and oxygen relationship Ustad is mentioning in a different location. Ustad says is aşk-ı kimyevi, the chemical law between carbon and oxygen. So we are consuming carbon and we are also getting the oxygen. So when they are also living, they are one of the reasons how we can talk, because it touches some part of our body and it allows us to speak. So, I mean, we can maybe understand few wisdom of all these chemicals, what is their functionality, but Allah is putting maybe hundreds of thousands of different wisdom, which we are not aware of it. But with the little knowledge we are exploring, so even our body from the cell level, I mean, no one can really claim that as a medical doctors or a scientist, we fully understand the human cell. Because there are professors from all their life long, they are studying human cell. They cannot explore completely, or any but different parts of our body, which is still they are exploring. How much percentage of our brain can be explored? Very little, right? So all of these complexities, Allah is administering, He's nurturing, He's giving all the necessities and in a perfect order. Because if the order is being broken, we are annihilated, we are collapsed, because the qayyumiyya for the human body is going to go down if these things somehow misorganized, because the factory should fully operate, otherwise the outcome will not go or it will not continue. So subhanallah, Allah is the greatest chemist, greatest doctor from all aspects. He's we cannot comprehend, but just trying to understand his attributes.
Jazakallah. When you talk, I felt enjoying a meal. Allah gave, mashallah, and this panel is like a spiritual meal, and we are enjoying, alhamdulillah, nurturing our spirit, our mind, our intellect. Jazakallah. I want to read from the chat too. There are some comments. Harun Hocam said that the organization of this treatise, the 30th Flash, attracts my attention. The first part, the name Quddus, is described as an addendum to the name Qayyum. The loop is closed. And also, Harun Hocam, I guess you commented on the example for Harun Hocam. The essence of names likens high voltage electricity. After reducing through many adapters, we can make use of electricity. Similarly, we reflect the names through adapters' veils. Konlejam, any comments on this comment? Or maybe Harun Hocam?
Yeah. I mean, Harun was giving an electricity metaphor, which I thought was excellent. Maybe for a slightly different reason, because electricity has to be constant for things to actually work, for devices to work, computers or televisions or whatever. And Qayyum is something that is there continuously. And if the Qayyumiyya is taken away, then it becomes intensely problematic. The things just collapse into annihilation, as Mustafa was mentioning.
And also about the science and scientists, Harun Hocam comments about, how we talked about scientists, going into shirk. Sometimes it's just a language which does not imply neither a strong belief nor a blasphemy. What I mean, showing a picture from the universe and created this does not provide a strong belief. What Nursi does is invoke, be able to in the attributes of the creator so that a person can conclude Allah is the greatest and the creator. The shortcut language involving Allah may unfortunately result in neglecting the intermediate steps the intellect requires to accompany the heart.
I think that's also an important point. I think just saying that Allah is the creator of the universe is only part of the story. It doesn't really imply a very strong belief. Not necessarily. It's just that it could be that just it's impossible for us to deny the existence of a creator, but that's very different from actually affirming the unity of a creator. So, language is deceptive, or can be deceptive.
In the 22nd words, Ustad says the affirmation of divine unity, Tawheed, is of two sorts. He gives this example, right?
Oh, yes. Qabul Adam, is it an Adam Qabul? Or am I thinking of something else?
The other one, for example, if the goods of a rich man arrive in a market or a town, there are two ways in which one may know they are his. One is briefly and simply, as with ordinary people, which is no one apart from him is capable of owning this vast amount of goods.
Right.
So, that point of view, one is superficial and common affirmation of divine unity, which says God is one, he has no partner, like his universe is his, saying that, okay, like everything belongs to God. But then we might do, some small tricks. But the second, actually, I was going to add this to this Ism Qayyum too. The second is true affirmation of divine unity, which through seeing on everything the stamp of his power, and on everything, the seal of his divine lordship and the inscriptions of his pen, is to open a window directly onto his light from everything, confirm and believe, almost certainty of seeing it, that everything emerges from the hand of his power, and that in no way has he any partner or assistant in his Godhead and in his divine lordship or in his sovereignty, thus to attain to a sort of perpetual awareness of the divine presence. And in the example, the goods of a rich man arrive in a market, and there are two people looking at those things, and one is briefly and simply saying that no one apart from that rich man is capable of owning this vast amount of goods. But when under the supervision of a common man, such as that, much of it may be stolen. Many others may claim ownership of parts of it. The second sort is this: through reading his writing on every packet, recognizing his signature on every roll, and seeing his seal on every bill, the man declares everything belongs to that person.
Yeah, those are very different affirmations of belief, aren't they?
MashaAllah, we are almost, it's been almost, we're at the end of our panel. Mustafa Hocam, any comments so far?
In regards to Harun Hocam's point where the name of Quddus is described as an addendum to the name Qayyum, what comes to as an example is, let's say we visited a factory touring and we see that everything is up and running and well organized. But while we are touring the factory, they took us in a room which is not functioning well. It's dirty, dusty, as if like they did not organize that room. So it is closely, I think, related, the Ism Quddus, because you know, the Qayyumiyya, it requires an action, a constant, you know, sustaining, administering. So this will bring up some kind of, you know, the organization. Without organization and cleaning and functioning, so this will be a little bit off without thinking the Quddus. So it's very closely related with the name of Quddus. This is one thing maybe comes as an example. The second thing is also Ustad in the second ray, I think is the coming section, mentioning the high voltage as the Harun Hojam is mentioning, because when we are thinking a factory, you know, up and running, administering, regulating, we are thinking when it's on the ground. Ustad is saying in the second ray, think about like palaces is flying around like the airplane, and how much energy they needed like to sustain over there. So in Walmart or some factory, think about it, they are flying around in a high speed. How much energy, how much like stability and continuity they needed? It's very huge amount. It's not easy to maintain an airplane, right? And think about like a factory is flying upside. So Ustad is, I think, giving this example to understand the high voltage power of the Qayyumiyah of Allah, because thousands of bigger than the earth, we have stars. They are flying around. It's like a factory. And then even the world itself is like a full factory. We go more than 100,000 kilometers per hour. So who's the one which is flying in the ocean of the universe with this speed without doing an instability or any kind of clashes and accidents? This is also maybe one example we could think about it to see the high voltage of the Qayyumiyah. Thank you.
Thank you for all your contributions. And I guess I read all the comments on the chat too. You can always write your comments and questions in the chat. Inshallah, next week we can continue from here. We will continue to talk about Ism Qayyum. Colin Hojam, do you have any comments? Mustafa Hojam?
I don't, so just leave Mustafa to make a dua, inshallah, or give us his comments.
No, I think fine, but do you want to make a dua, Colin Hojam?
I'll let you do that this week.
اللهم بحق سورة الإخلاص اجعلنا من عبادك المخلصين المخلصين آمين آمين سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. الفاتحة.